Imagine it is your first day at a new job as a software engineer. Your manager pulls you aside and says there is a legacy project, and from now on, it is yours to maintain. You open the files. The README has exactly 4 words. Do not delete anything. You open the project directory and find it full of bizarre file names and 1,000 lines of code that look like they've been copy-pasted 800 times by someone who is no longer with the company. You're furious. This isn't a project. This is an archaeological dig. And then you have one question. How is this thing still running? So you start cleaning it up. The next day, the system crashes. You quit. The human genome feels exactly like that. It contains around 3 billion base pairs, the portion that actually codes for proteins. Around 1.5 to 2%. The rest is a vast landscape of repeated sequences, ancient viral remnants, jumping genetic elements, and stretches of DNA that scientists spend decades calling junk. But here is the thing. If you actually try to delete the junk, that is when things get dangerous. Because the scariest property of any living system is this. What looks like garbage might be the circuit breaker. The genome doesn't just look like legacy code. The truly insane part is how deliberately messy it is. Take a single gene. You'd think it works like a clean function. Input goes in, protein comes out. That is not what happens. Most genes get transcribed in full first, including massive stretches called introns, sequences that don't code for anything. Those introns get cut out. The remaining pieces get spliced back together. Then it gets translated into protein. This is like writing 10,000 lines of code. The system automatically deletes 9,000 of them before runtime, and then reassembles the rest according to rules that nobody documented and nobody dares touch. And it gets stranger. The same gene can be spliced differently depending on context. Splice it one way, you get one protein. Splice it another way, you get a completely different protein. This is called alternative splicing. From a biology perspective, it is elegant resource reuse. From an engineering perspective, it is the kind of thing that would send your tech lead straight to the hospital. Then there are transposons, and these are the horror movie part. Think of them as DNA sequences that copy themselves, relocate themselves, and insert themselves wherever they feel like. In a codebase, this would be like a group of interns showing up at 3 a.m., opening random branches, committing changes nobody approved, and quietly editing config files across the entire repository. The next morning you check, and somehow the project still runs. So you leave it alone. Transposons and their remnants account for over 45% of the human genome. And then there are pseudogenes, genes that used to work, then broke, and were never deleted. They just sit there, accumulating. They don't behave like a functional module. Ask them if they do anything useful. Silence. Ask them why they're still here. Silence. But go ahead and delete one. See what happens. And then there are endogenous retroviruses, which are, somehow, even more absurd. A significant portion of the human genome consists of sequences left behind by ancient viruses that infected our ancestors millions of years ago. The viruses inserted their own code into our genome. The viruses left. The code stayed. By any reasonable standard, this is a historical security breach. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. Some of those viral remnants were later repurposed by the body into functional components. The proteins involved in forming the mammalian placenta, partially derived from ancient viral genes. So the company got hacked. Years passed, and one day someone realized, wait, the core payment infrastructure was modified by the malware. You can't call it malicious anymore. You can't delete it either. Gene regulation is where it starts feeling like a nightmare. You might assume a gene has one switch next to it. That assumption is adorable. Some enhancers, sequences that activate genes, are located hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of base pairs away from the gene they control. And they don't operate linearly. They work because DNA physically folds inside the cell nucleus. When it folds at the right angle, two distant sequences end up adjacent in three-dimensional space. That is when the remote activation happens. This is like printing your entire codebase onto a roll of paper, reading it line by line, understanding nothing. And then a senior engineer walks over and crumples the whole thing into a ball. He points to two corners now touching and says, "See, that part calls that part. This isn't spaghetti code. This is spaghetti origami." And then there is pleiotropy, when one gene does multiple unrelated things simultaneously. One gene does not just do one job. Take TP53. It is involved in tumor suppression, cell cycle regulation, DNA repair, and programmed cell death. In software terms, this is a single function that handles user authentication, billing, customer support tickets, inventory management, and the office holiday party raffle. Try to optimize the login flow, and the raffle breaks. Try to fix the billing, and the warehouse explodes. This kind of coupling is everywhere in living systems. It is not Lego. It is more like a pot of porridge that has been simmering for 3.8 billion years. At this point, trying to separate the ingredients is not really an option. The human body also has some spectacular legacy routing problems. Take the recurrent laryngeal nerve. It connects the brain to the larynx. The direct path, a few centimeters. The actual path, it travels down from the neck, loops under the aorta, and comes back up. In humans, this is an annoying detour. In the giraffe, this nerve runs over 4 meters. That is like routing a cable from New York down to Miami and back up to your living room in Boston. Why does this exist? Because in early fish ancestors, this routing made perfect anatomical sense. Then bodies changed. Necks grew, hearts relocated. But the nerve path was never rerouted. The project scaled up enormously. The original cable is still running through the old topology. Nobody ever scheduled a maintenance window to fix it. There is also the broken vitamin C synthesis gene. Most mammals can synthesize their own vitamin C. Humans cannot. At some point in our evolutionary history, the gene responsible for this got broken. Why didn't that immediately kill us? Because our diet happened to contain enough external vitamin C. The module was broken, but a free external API was providing the same functionality. The team looked at it, decided it was fine, and moved on. The module was broken, but a free external API was providing the same functionality. The team looked at it, decided it was fine, and moved on. That we will fix it later decision has now been sitting in the codebase for roughly 60 million years. The Y chromosome has its own story. In early mammals, the X and Y chromosomes were much more similar in size and gene content. Over time, the Y chromosome lost its ability to recombine and repair itself the way other chromosomes do, and it slowly degraded. It is like a long-running branch with no code reviews, no unit tests, and no clean merge path. Errors accumulate. Features get dropped. Eventually, you're left with a small set of core functions. And people keep asking whether the whole branch is just going to be abandoned one day. So, does the human genome look like legacy code? Absolutely. Redundant, bloated, tightly coupled, full of deprecated functions, awkward routing, broken modules, ancient malware that became load-bearing infrastructure, remote calls across distances that make no intuitive sense, no complete documentation, no architecture diagram anyone trusts. And most terrifyingly, it replicates every single day, accumulates damage every single day, and relies on a patchwork of repair mechanisms just to stay functional. Every cell is a production environment. DNA damage comes from replication errors, oxidative stress, radiation, and chemical exposure. The body had to develop an entire suite of repair pathways. And then you realize that repair system is itself complex enough to qualify as another legacy codebase. Patches on top of patches. Patches that interact with each other in undocumented ways. In a company, you might recommend a refactor. In biology, you keep quiet, because this system has been running in production for 3.8 billion years. So why did it end up like this? Because evolution is not a software architect. Evolution is more like an on-call engineer getting woken up at 3 a.m. It doesn't ask whether the solution is elegant. It doesn't ask whether it will be maintainable in 5 years. It asks one question: can we survive tonight? Natural selection has no master design, no product roadmap. It keeps whatever improves survival and reproduction right now. If a change works now, it stays. If it causes problems later, that is a later problem. If later never comes, that branch just goes extinct. Life has no staging environment. Earth is the main branch. Every mutation ships directly to production. If it works, descendants keep running it. If it fails, that version goes offline. No rollback, no canary release, no maintenance window, and there is no gentle CTO who is going to say, let's take 3 days of downtime, flip the retina around, reroute the laryngeal nerve, and while we're at it, resolve the conflict between birth canal diameter and brain size. It is not possible. An ancestor with a half-flipped retina can't see. An ancestor mid-nerve rerouting can't speak. An ancestor mid-pelvis restructure can't give birth. If the intermediate version can't survive, it doesn't matter how good the final version would have been. This is evolution's most brutal constraint. It doesn't start from an optimal design. It starts from whatever already exists and makes incremental changes, and every single step must be survivable. This produces an enormous amount of local optima. It is like being able to climb only the nearest hill. You can see a taller mountain in the distance, but getting there requires going downhill first. And going downhill in evolutionary terms means reduced fitness. You'd be eliminated before you ever reach the better peak. The recurrent laryngeal nerve, the inverted retina, difficult childbirth, all of them carry the shadow of this constraint. Awkward, but every step along the way made sense at the time. And a lot of what looks useless probably isn't. Non-coding DNA contains enormous numbers of regulatory elements. Enhancers, silencers, promoters, insulators. Non-coding RNAs involved in gene expression, chromatin state, and development. DNA isn't a flat instruction manual. It is a 3-dimensional system folded inside a cell nucleus. Some sequences don't code for proteins, but they determine when coding happens, where it happens, and how much. Think of the people in a company who don't write business logic. Finance, HR, legal, facilities, even the people who make sure the building stays clean and the doors stay locked. They don't ship features, but you can't say they're useless. Delete all of them, and by the next morning, the company does not become more efficient. Nobody's getting paid, the compliance audit fails, and the bathrooms are a disaster. That said, this doesn't mean every corner of the genome is a hidden treasure. There genuinely is a lot of historical debris in there. Transposon remnants, broken genes, repetitive sequences that appear to serve no function. The problem is, bioinformatics still frequently can't tell the difference between actual garbage, an archive, scaffolding, a fuse, and an ancient but critical config file. The instinct of a junior engineer is to delete anything they don't understand. The instinct of a senior engineer is, don't touch it, because the ugliest section of any codebase usually has a story behind it. A production incident nobody wants to repeat. So what if a software engineer redesigned the human genome from scratch? Short term, it would probably look cleaner. Compress the genome, remove redundant sequences, streamline the introns, reroute the problematic paths, decouple the functions, fix the vitamin C module, flip the retina, remove the wisdom teeth, give the appendix a proper job title or a dignified exit package. Renegotiate the birth canal versus brain size situation. It would look very modern, very clean, very much like the slide deck of a startup that just closed its Series A. And then the environment shifts, and it dies very cleanly too. Because redundancy isn't just waste. Redundancy is also buffer. Repetitive sequences may provide space for recombination. Broken genes can sometimes be repurposed. Viral remnants can become new functional components. Alternative splicing generates protein diversity from a limited gene count. Non-coding regions add regulatory complexity. DeployD provides backup copies for countless mutations. All of this looks inefficient. But life isn't solving a fixed problem. It is dealing with climate shifts, novel pathogens, food scarcity, radiation, competition, migration, population bottlenecks, mass extinctions, and random chance. A highly optimized system might perform brilliantly in today's environment. Change the environment, and it shatters. And this is the deepest difference between engineered systems and evolved systems. Human engineers optimize for comprehensibility, maintainability, and predictability. Evolution optimizes for survival, for the ability to keep running under conditions that nobody could have anticipated. Human engineering elegance comes from clean boundaries. Biological robustness comes from layers of redundancy and compromise that don't look particularly dignified. We find it messy. It has been through 5 mass extinctions. It might find our standards a little quaint. So, back to the original question. Is the human genome just legacy code? From a software aesthetics perspective, yes. From an engineering standards perspective, absolutely yes. From a documentation perspective, it reads like a disaster-tier outsourced project from a vendor that no longer exists. But from the perspective of life's history, it is not just legacy code. It is a live production system that has never had a scheduled maintenance window, was never signed off by any architect, has no complete documentation, has absorbed patches from countless ancient viruses, runs on random mutation and natural selection, and has been in continuous deployment for 3.8 billion years. It is ugly, it is convoluted, it is redundant, it solves problems in ways that no reasonable engineer would approve, but it is running, and it has been running long enough to produce you, sitting in front of a screen, criticizing its code quality. So you're back at your desk, you open the directory again, you see a folder, ancient to virus, not delete. You ask your manager, why can't I delete this? Your manager looks at it and says, that is where the placenta module lives. You find another file. You say, this is repeated 1,000,000 times. Surely I can delete this. Your manager says, could be part of the chromosome structure, could be a regulatory region, could genuinely be nothing. So you ask, can I delete it or not? Your manager is quiet for a moment. You can delete it. If the species goes extinct, you're responsible for the rollback. You take your hands off the keyboard. And that, more or less, is the most honest description of where modern biology stands with the human genome. Disgusted, astonished, desperately wanting to refactor it, but absolutely unwilling to touch anything.